This video is going to walk through the process of project management, particularly how you're going to apply it to a senior project. Before we get into how you do project management, let's talk quickly about what it is. At its basic level, project management is about planning, tracking, and eventually controlling all of your project activities, all of your project expenses, the project workload distributed to all of your resources, and your project risks. So why would you bother to do this? Well, there are lots of good reasons. We can talk about how you can control your projects, you can shorten the time it takes to develop a new product, you can lower your costs, you get higher quality in the end, you have improved productivity, better coordination between people, overall less stress. But at the end of the day, this is going to keep you sane. Project management is going to keep things on track so you know where you are, you know where you're going, and you have a much better chance of success. So why do you do this? Let's talk a little bit about things that can go wrong in projects. So on a personal level, have you ever forgotten something at the store, maybe left an object behind like an umbrella and it starts raining, missed an assignment, homework assignment, work assignment, something like that? Now imagine these things occurring when you have a large group working on a large project that maybe takes a year or more to complete. And everyone involved with it has lots of other tasks that they're doing, several other projects they're working on, and they can get distracted by those things. What if every task that a person is working on actually has some dependencies? Something isn't going to be happening later if this task isn't done. Simple things like you're not going to be able to have that party unless you pick up your party supplies beforehand. Things like that, but much more complicated potentially. What if different people had different things that they were doing and they had to happen at the same time in order to get to some eventual deliverable? So project planning helps manage all of that. It's going to help you manage your senior project. It's also a good tool for managing your life, your work, whatever. It can be applied to so many different things throughout your life. We'll apply it here to senior project, but I hope you see the benefits and actually use it elsewhere in your life. There are lots of things that are included in project management. For example, you might have a simple task list. That's a type of project management. If you've ever made a list to go shopping at the store, that is a little bit of project management you're doing. It can also involve timelines. When you have something occurring over a longer period of time, that becomes important. It can be budget, keeping track of how much you're spending at each point in time and how much you plan to. Resource allocation. So this is from physical resources like materials, supplies, and so on, to people resources, how much time someone has to devote to the project. And there are other things in project management. This is an entire discipline that I'm basically covering here in 10 minutes, but you will get sufficient knowledge of project management to understand it. If you like this, again, it's a discipline. You can go get a degree in project management if you want to. But even if you don't go to that route, you will have the basic tools to manage your projects. One of the basic tools of project planning is the Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is made up of several types of things. Milestones are one of the first things that you need to know about. Milestones are events where you have specific deliverables. At a milestone like, say, a preliminary design review, there are certain things you have to do. And that brings us to the second point. What do you have to do to be successful when you reach a milestone? That's what we call the tasks. What is all the activities you have to do to be successful at that milestone? You might also need to know how much time each activity is going to take in order to be able to properly plan when you do those activities. You might then have to choose what activities occur before other ones. And this can be purely, well, I want to do that first and this other one comes later, or they can depend on each other. There are certain activities that have to happen before other ones because you need the information from the first activity before you can start the second one. There are also resources in a Gantt chart. There can be physical resources, but more often it's used to track the people resources, who's working on each task. Let me walk you through the process of creating a Gantt chart. Your first step is to identify the milestone events and the deliverables associated with them. For example, in your senior project, you have a scope of work document coming up. In addition, later on, you will have a preliminary design review, a critical design review, and there are other activities as well. So after you've identified your milestones and the associated deliverables, you want to focus in on one of them and then list all the tasks required to get you through that milestone successfully. Let's focus on the first milestone event, the scope of work report. That deliverable requires lots of pre-work, background research, and so on. So to list out all the tasks, we need to think about what goes into the scope of work and what needs to happen before that can be written. So I recommend not doing this as a list. Grab yourself a stack of Post-its or something like that, or scraps of paper, and write down each task on an individual sheet, because we'll be moving these around. Technical literature. You need to gather some of that together. You need to interview your sponsor, document the current process, do a patent search, interview some users, look at similar products, perhaps check some customer forums, and probably other things. So gather yourself a list of all of the tasks that need to be done to get you to the scope of work. After you've identified all of the tasks you think need to happen, you then want to check to make sure they are SMART. Now, SMART's an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Each one of these tasks needs to be all of those things. So let's take a look at a couple of these. First off, the technical literature. How do we make sure that your technical literature is actually written as a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely task? Well, what we're going to need to do is break it up. So you first might want to identify the technical challenges. Then search the library database for solutions to those challenges. So that might be a way that you achieve the technical literature goal by having specific measurable activities. What about interviewing the sponsor? Well, create a list of questions for them, schedule the meeting, and then actually conduct the meeting. Obviously, you'll take notes and things like that, so you don't need to list everything, but you need to make sure that you've captured small enough tasks that you know you're not forgetting anything in the process. Once you've ensured that all of your tasks are SMART, you then want to look at how long each one of them takes. So I've got 5 different tasks listed here. Let's do a quick estimate. Identifying the technical challenges, maybe that takes 3 hours. Library database, 2 hours. Scheduling a sponsor meeting should be less than an hour, but I tend not to measure any less than that, so we'll give it an hour. Create list of questions for the sponsor, an hour, and interview the sponsor, probably about an hour. So now for our Gantt chart, we've already identified milestones and then tasks leading to milestones, and then we've ensured that each of those tasks is a SMART task, and we've assigned how long we estimate each task will take to complete. Now you want to order them. Let's figure out the sequence of events. So for example, searching the library database is going to come after identifying technical challenges. Scheduling your sponsor meeting is going to come before you have your sponsor meeting and possibly before you create the list of questions for sponsor. This is one of the choices that you can make. Another important aspect of a Gantt chart is defining the dependencies between the tasks, specifically saying which things have to happen before or after other things. And this is critical to having a good Gantt chart because you want your chart to be able to dynamically change as you change some of the information in it. So, for example, if I have a project task that I thought was only going to take a week and it ends up taking 2, then all the later tasks that depend on it need to be delayed in time. And a well set up Gantt chart with dependencies will do that automatically. If you don't have any dependencies, you've got to do everything by hand, and you will likely forget to move some of your tasks. So you'll end up surprised that something didn't get done. So dependencies are really a critical aspect of it. Let's look at this short list of tasks and see how they relate to each other. So first of all, we already said that identifying the technical challenges needs to happen before you do a library database search, and I think that's appropriate. That is something that really needs to happen, otherwise your database search is not going to be very well informed. But in addition, the technical challenges are important for determining what sort of questions you need to ask your sponsor. So there are actually 2 tasks that depend on that technical challenge identification step. Now, once you have a list of questions for your sponsor, you can walk into their sponsor meeting. What you don't want to do is walk into the meeting without the questions. And of course, you shouldn't walk into your sponsor meeting without previously scheduling that meeting. So these are the sort of things that I mean by dependencies. So that brings me to the last major step of gathering information to create your Gantt chart, and that is choosing the roles for each of the tasks. Who is going to lead that task? So for example, you're going to identify the lead person for each one of these. In some cases, it might be more than one person who's working on it. And once you've identified all of those, you now are ready to go and put this into chart form. I'll handle that in a separate video. Let me just take a moment to summarize what we talked about. So when you are creating a Gantt chart, you want to start out by listing your milestones and deliverables. Once you have those, for every deliverable, you want to determine what the tasks are that have to be completed. Once you have a task, you then question whether it is SMART. In other words, is it specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely? After you've got the tasks, you want to estimate the duration for each of those, then choose what order you think they should occur in. Once you have an order laid out, you can ask yourself which of these actually have dependencies, so they must be in that order. And then finally, identifying team members to work on each of those tasks. Gathering all that information together, I recommend doing it totally separate from your computer. Post-it notes, whiteboards, you can move things around much quicker, get your project laid out, and then move to creating it in the Gantt chart form.